Shut up, bitch. You think your degree makes you better than us? The officer's voice tore through the night, dripping with hatred. Please, please. I didn't do anything, her words cracked, her body trembling as two uniforms pinned her to the ground. Don't talk back to me, you filthy little girl. Another cop pressed his knee against her neck, cutting off her air while the others laughed. She coughed, choked, her voice rasping. I can't breathe, please. Stop, stop. One of them sneered, leaning closer so she could see the twisted grin on his face. This is just getting started. Her screams ripped through the night as they tore away her last defenses. Desperate, she clawed at the dirt, nails breaking, blood streaking her hands. Every cry echoed with terror, but no help came. The flashing lights that should have been her protection became the stage for her destruction. Don't kill her yet, one of them hissed. Make her remember who owns this town. But when her body finally went still, when her last cry dissolved into silence, the men stood over her as if nothing had happened. They zipped up their pride with cold hands, smirking under the shield of their badges. Another one. Nobody will care, one muttered, kicking her lifeless hand aside. They thought they'd buried the truth. They thought it was just another cover-up. They didn't know who her father was. They didn't know who her father was. But before he became the man consumed by rage, before his nights turned into sleepless hunts, he was simply a father. A man who woke up every morning with one purpose: making life easier for his only daughter. The smell of sizzling eggs and toasted bread filled the small but warm kitchen. Rise and shine, doctor, he called out, his deep voice echoing with a softness reserved only for her. Marcus Hayes, 60 years old, retired FBI agent, wore an apron that didn't quite fit his broad frame. The sight of him fumbling with a spatula always made Alicia laugh. From the hallway, her voice rang out, tired but teasing. Dad, you're gonna burn those again. You're supposed to flip, not massacre them. He chuckled, shaking his head. I've interrogated terrorists, sweetheart. Don't tell me I can't handle breakfast. Moments later, she appeared hair-tied messily in a bun, books clutched under her arm, eyes heavy from late-night studying. She was beautiful in a simple, unassuming way, a bright smile, skin glowing with youth, and an energy that made every room lighter. They sat together at the table, laughter echoing as he pushed a plate toward her. Eat, doctors need fuel. She rolled her eyes. Medical students need coffee, Dad. Fuel comes later, when I can afford real groceries. He smiled, watching her scarf down food with half focus on her textbook. These were the moments he lived for, not the years of FBI service, not the accolades, but this. Mornings with his daughter, her ambition shining brighter than anything in his world. Your mother would be proud, he whispered, almost to himself. Alicia paused, her expression softening. She reached for his hand. I know she would. And you've been both parents. Dad, you've given me everything. His throat tightened. He looked at her, the only piece of his late wife he had left, and felt a swell of pride and fear all at once. She was his world, his purpose, his redemption. That evening, their routine continued. Dinner was simple chicken and rice, but the table was alive with conversation. Alicia recounted a funny moment from the hospital, how a nervous patient had mistaken her for a nurse and begged her not to give injections. Marcus roared with laughter, shaking his head. They don't know you hate needles more than anyone else, Dad, she protested, smacking his arm playfully. I've gotten better. They laughed until their stomachs ached. Later, as she packed her bag for class, Marcus stood quietly at the doorway, watching. The determination on her face reminded him of his younger self, driven, unrelenting. But her heart was gentler than his had ever been. She wanted to save lives, not take them. You're going to change the world, kiddo, he said. She smiled without looking up, one patient at a time. The night ended with small rituals, him double-checking the locks, her leaving a messy trail of papers on the couch, both of them exchanging goodnights filled with warmth. The house was ordinary, quiet, almost sacred in its peace. Yet, beneath the laughter and love, an invisible shadow loomed. Marcus felt it, sometimes a gut instinct honed over decades in the bureau, a sense that peace never lasted, that life had a cruel way of ripping joy away when you least expected it. He brushed the thought aside, unwilling to let his paranoia taint her happiness. But later, lying awake in bed, he replayed her laughter, her teasing, her smile at the dinner table. Something inside him whispered that moments like these were fragile, precious, finite. For now, though they were just a father and daughter, cocooned in their little world of ordinary joys, a retired agent who had laid down his weapons, and a young woman who dreamed of saving lives. Neither of them knew that fate was already moving against them. Neither of them saw the storm gathering beyond the horizon, and when it struck, it would tear their world apart forever. and when it struck, it tore their world apart forever. It began as whispers of unease, moments so small they almost seemed forgettable. A patrol car slowing down when Alicia walked home from class. A uniformed officer staring too long at her in the grocery store parking lot. She laughed it off when she told her father, "They probably just think I look suspicious carrying so many books." But Marcus didn't laugh. His FBI instincts prickled. He noticed the way her voice carried a nervous lilt when she said it. The way she avoided his eyes. Something was wrong. "Stay cautious," he told her one morning, gripping her shoulder tighter than usual. She smiled to ease him. "I'll be fine, Dad. Don't worry so much." But fathers always worry. And sometimes, their fears are justified. That night, the streets were quiet, damp with recent rain. Alicia was driving home after a late study session, her car humming steadily beneath the halo of streetlights. She hummed softly to herself, half distracted by tomorrow's schedule. Then the red and blue lights flashed in her rearview mirror. Her stomach dropped. She pulled over obediently, rolling the window halfway down. 2 officers approached, their boots splashing in puddles. Their faces carried the same arrogance she'd noticed before. "Evening, miss," one drawled. "License and registration." She handed it over with a polite smile, though her hands trembled. "Did I do something wrong, officer?" The second cop leaned in closer, eyes crawling over her like a predator sizing prey. "Speeding, maybe, or maybe you just caught our attention." She stiffened. "I am on my way home. I live just a few blocks from here." "Step out of the car," her breath caught. "Why, I haven't step out." His voice was steel. The pavement was cold under her flats as they pulled her toward the back of the car. Her heart pounded, fear clawing at her throat. She tried reason, tried calm. "Look, I'm a medical student. I have exams tomorrow. Please." Just one of them shoved her against the hood, his breath hot against her ear. "Don't care who you are." Her scream pierced the night, but the empty street swallowed it whole. "Keep quiet," the other snarled, wrenching her arms behind her, "or this'll get worse." She fought, tears streaming, nails digging into metal, her voice breaking. "Stop, please stop. Somebody help." No one came. The assault was vicious, relentless. Their laughter was cruel, echoing like knives in the dark. She cried until her voice gave out, until her body sagged under their weight, until hope drained from her eyes. And when it was done, when she lay broken and gasping, one of them pressed a hand to her throat. Her last sound was a strangled whimper, her life slipping away beneath the crushing force. The night went silent again. The cover-up began immediately. Pack her stuff, wipe the dashcam. She resisted arrest. That's the report. Their voices were casual, like men discussing the weather. They zipped her body in a black bag, loading her into the back of their cruiser. Within hours, paperwork would be filed. Charges would vanish. Another incident buried beneath blue walls of silence. By morning, the story was official. A young black woman had overdosed behind the wheel and died before medical help could arrive. Case closed. Marcus received the call at dawn. The words didn't make sense at first. Found unresponsive, accidentable overdose. His daughter, the girl who didn't even drink. His chest constricted. His mind rejected it, even as his hands trembled around the phone. At the morgue, he saw her, pale, cold, bruises blooming along her arms and throat. The spark in her eyes extinguished. Jesus. No, his knees buckled. He clutched the steel table like a drowning man, tears breaking free despite years of discipline. He pressed a hand to her cheek, but it was ice. His little girl, his only family, reduced to silence. He wanted answers. He demanded them, but the detectives shrugged, their words rehearsed. Toxicology reports suggests drugs, nothing to indicate foul play. He knew a lie when he heard one. He had built a career on exposing them. His voice cracked, fury burning through his grief. She didn't do drugs. She was murdered. The officer looked at him flatly. "Case is closed, sir." "I'm sorry for your loss." Sorry, the word echoed like an insult. That night, Marcus sat alone in her room. Her textbooks still scattered across the desk. A half-finished cup of coffee sat cold on the nightstand. Her jacket hung by the door, waiting for an owner who would never return. He touched the pages of her open notes, her handwriting looping with determination. A future stolen, a life extinguished. His hands shook, but not from grief alone, from rage, from the terrible knowledge that justice would never come through the system he once believed in. He stared at her photograph on the dresser, her smile so alive it hurt to look at. His reflection blurred behind it, a broken man staring back. In that moment, Marcus Hayes changed. The father mourning his daughter began to die, and something far darker, far more dangerous, began to take his place. The father mourning his daughter began to die, and something far darker, far more dangerous, began to take his place. But darkness does not come overnight. It seeps in slowly, insidiously through sleepless nights and unbearable silence. Marcus Hayes had always been a man of discipline. Decades in the FBI had taught him the value of order, of composure, of control. But now his life was chaos. His bed was an unmade mess of tangled sheets, his body restless, his eyes bloodshot from nights without rest. Every time he closed them, he saw her face, not the smiling Alicia at the breakfast table, but the broken Alicia on a cold steel slab. He wandered the house like a ghost. Her voice lingered in every room, in every shadow. The coffee mug she'd left behind, the medical books sprawled across the couch, the faint smell of her perfume in the hallway. Each detail clawed at him, mocking his helplessness. At night, he sat by her door, unable to step inside her bedroom again. He whispered apologies into the darkness. "I should have been there. I should have protected you." His hands trembled, gripping his knees until his nails dug into skin. But apologies changed nothing. She was gone. A week after her death, Marcus returned to the place where it happened. The roadside was ordinary quiet, lined with trees, damp from a recent drizzle. But for him it was hallowed ground. He knelt where her car had been pulled over, pressing his palm against the cold asphalt as if he could feel her last heartbeat echoing through it. He imagined her screams, the cruelty in their voices, the violence. His chest tightened, rage colliding with grief until it felt like he might split open. "This is where you died," he whispered, his voice breaking. "And I wasn't here." Tears blurred his vision, but through them, he saw tire marks, faint traces of a struggle, proof that something had happened. But when he reported it, the police dismissed him. "Mr. Hayes, we've already ruled it an accident," the officer said flatly. "You're grieving, I understand, but there's nothing here, nothing." Marcus snapped, slamming his fist on the desk. "There's bruising on her body, ligature marks on her wrists. Do you think I don't know what assault looks like? I've spent my life investigating cases like this." The detective didn't flinch. "Our report is final. If you continue harassing the department, we'll have no choice but to file a complaint." It was like slamming against a brick wall. The system he once served had turned its back on him. Justice was a word reserved for others. For him, there was only silence. At night, his dreams became battlegrounds. In some, he saw Alicia calling for him, her voice echoing through endless hallways he could never reach. In others, he saw the cops laughing, taunting, daring him to stop them. He woke, drenched in sweat, fists clenched, breath ragged. He tried to drown the pain in whiskey, bottles piling by his chair. But even alcohol couldn't numb the guilt gnawing at him. He replayed every moment. What if he had driven to pick her up that night? What if he had followed his instincts when she mentioned the stairs? What if? Guilt is a parasite, and it was eating him alive. Yet beneath the grief and guilt, another part of Marcus stirred, the part forged in the bureau, the part trained to observe, to analyze, to survive. He couldn't turn it off. Even as his heart broke, his mind worked. He replayed details, the bruises on her neck, the position of her car, the inconsistencies in the report. He saw patterns, lies, cover-ups, manipulation. It was a puzzle, and puzzles demanded solutions. But this was no ordinary case. This was his daughter. That made him both investigator and victim, a duality tearing him apart. One night, he sat at his desk, her photo propped in front of him. His FBI badge lay beside it, dusty, retired, but still a symbol of who he had been. He picked it up, staring at his reflection in its metallic surface. "Do I honor the law," he whispered, "or do I honor you?" His chest tightened, breath trembling. For decades, the law had been his compass, but now it felt like a cage, because the law had failed her. And rage whispered in his ear, "If the law won't punish them, you must." Still, he fought it. He tried. He filed appeals, demanded reinvestigations, even went to federal contacts. Doors slammed in his face. Excuses piled up. Insufficient evidence. No probable cause. A tragic overdose. Each denial was another nail in her coffin. Each dismissal another wound in his chest. By the third week, Marcus sat alone in his living room, her photo in his hands. His face was gaunt, his beard unshaven, his eyes hollow. "I gave them everything," he muttered. "My years, my loyalty, my life." His voice cracked, and when it mattered most, they gave me nothing. He set the photo down gently. Then, slowly, he reached for the drawer beneath the table. His hand closed around cold steel. His old service weapon, still polished, still loaded. He held it, heavy in his hand. Memories, crash trades, interrogations, arrests. Years of enforcing the law, Years of believing justice was real, and now all of it felt like a lie. The barrel trembled in his grip, not toward himself, toward them, toward the men who had taken his daughter and hidden behind badges. The war inside him was reaching its breaking point. Law on one side, rage on the other, and for the first time, Marcus Hayes wasn't sure which side would win. Law on one side, rage on the other, and far away, in homes filled with laughter and comfort, the men who had destroyed Marcus's life were sleeping peacefully. They were not monsters in appearance. That was the first cruelty. By morning they were fathers, husbands, neighbors who smiled and waved as they picked up newspapers from their lawns. By night they were predators cloaked in blue uniforms, shielded by a system that had long since rotted from within. Officer Rick Stanton leaned against his kitchen counter, sipping coffee while his wife hummed to the radio and packed school lunches for their kids. He kissed his daughter on the forehead as she skipped into the room. "Daddy, will you be at the recital tonight?" she asked with a smile. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart," he said, ruffling her hair. His wife beamed at him, pride in her eyes. To them, Rick was the ideal family man, a provider, a protector. But beneath that polished exterior lived a man who wore cruelty like a second skin. The night before, he had been the one pressing Alicia's face against cold steel, mocking her pleas. Now, he wore a father's grin, the blood on his conscience invisible to those who loved him. Sergeant Dale Murphy was no different. To his neighbors, he was the friendly man who mowed his lawn every Sunday morning, offering beers over the fence. He volunteered at the local church, shaking hands with the pastor, bowing his head in prayers. But behind closed doors, Dale's eyes carried arrogance. He had spent years in the force, climbing ranks not through honor but through loyalty to silence. He was the architect of cover-ups, the man who knew which strings to pull to make damning reports disappear. He didn't see corruption as evil, it was simply survival. Keep the department's name clean. Keep the public blind. Keep the boys safe. That was his creed. And under it, Alicia's death was nothing more than another file stamped and shelved. Then there was Officer Jason Cole, the youngest of the trio, barely 30, still carrying the brashness of youth. Jason had once dreamed of being different. In the academy, he'd spoken of justice, of service. But years in Stanton's shadow had corroded him. Now, his loyalty to the badge outweighed his loyalty to truth. Yet, unlike the others, Jason's guilt festered. He drank more than usual after that night, his hands trembling when no one was watching. Sometimes, in the quiet hours, he saw her face, the terror in her eyes as she begged. He heard her voice, "Please, please stop it," haunted him, though he'd never admit it. Together, these three men carried themselves with untouchable confidence. In the locker room, laughter echoed as they joked about the incident, cloaking their crime in crude humor. "No one's gonna believe the old man," Stanton sneered. "They'll call it grief. They'll call it crazy." "Exactly," Murphy added, lighting a cigarette. "Case is closed. Our word against his, and we know whose word counts." Jason remained silent, tying his boots slower than usual. He forced a chuckle when Stanton slapped his back, but his eyes didn't meet theirs. Deep down, doubt gnawed at him. But in this world, doubt was weakness. And weakness was dangerous. The system itself fed their arrogance. Reports vanished. Body cams malfunctioned. Dash cams went mysteriously blank. Supervisors closed files without a second glance. Judges, bound by friendships with the department, looked the other way. The blue shield was impenetrable, and within it, these men thrived. They weren't anomalies, they were products of the rot. In the community, they projected authority. At traffic stops, they carried themselves like kings of the road. At local diners, they never paid their bills. At bars, they boasted openly, cloaked in the certainty that no one would dare cross them. "People forget we own this town," Murphy often reminded them. "We decide who walks free. We decide who gets buried." And for years no one had challenged them. But cracks existed. Jason's unease grew heavier by the day. One evening he sat alone in his apartment, a bottle half empty on the table. The news played softly on TV, an anchor reciting another report of a young black man resisting arrest. Another cover-up. Another life gone. Jason's stomach turned. He switched the channel, but the image of Alicia's lifeless body refused to leave. He pressed his palms to his face, whispering, "What the hell are we doing?" But the next morning, in uniform, he swallowed it all. He laughed when the others laughed. He followed orders, because silence was survival, and survival meant complicity. The trio's arrogance wasn't just personal, it was institutional. When Marcus stormed into the precinct demanding answers, they didn't flinch. They knew the system would protect them. "Crazy old man," Stanton muttered under his breath as Marcus left, veins bulging with fury. He'll burn himself out. Murphy smirked, puffing smoke. He's already broken. Grief makes men weak, and weak men can't touch us. Jason said nothing, but inside, the word weak lingered like poison, because he didn't feel strong. He felt haunted. At home, their lives painted illusions. Stanton tucked his daughter into bed, humming softly as if his hands hadn't stolen another father's child. Murphy kissed his wife at church, shaking the pastor's hand with the same grip he'd used to cover up a murder. Jason stood in front of his bathroom mirror, eyes hollow, wondering if the reflection staring back was still human. They lived double lives with ease, heroes in daylight, predators in darkness, and all the while Marcus Hayes's world lay in ruins. But soon, their confidence would be their undoing. Their arrogance, their untouchable facade, would blind them to the storm rising quietly against them. Because the man they had underestimated was no ordinary father. He was a hunter trained by the Bureau, a predator who had stalked worse men than them. And unlike them, Marcus had nothing left to lose. And unlike them, Marcus had nothing left to lose. That realization came slowly, like a knife twisting deeper with each passing day. Every phone call unanswered, every report dismissed, every lawyer shaking their head, each one hammered the truth into his chest. The law would never deliver justice for Elise. The men who killed her weren't hiding. They didn't need to. They walked free under the shield of their uniforms, smirking in daylight, predators by night, and his system stood guard around them like an impenetrable fortress. Marcus stared at his old FBI badge one last time, lying flat on his desk beside his daughter's photograph. The badge was dull now, edges scratched, its power long stripped away. He closed his hand around it, then placed it gently in a drawer. The law was dead to him. From that moment on, there was only vengeance. The first step was information, and information was a language Marcus spoke fluently. He began with Officer Rick Stanton, a thick man with a swagger that announced his presence before his voice did. Marcus tailed him discreetly for days, following his routine: morning coffee at the same diner, school drop-off for his daughter, a workout at the precinct gym. Stanton was predictable, almost arrogant in his consistency. That arrogance would be his weakness. Marcus kept notes, times, locations, habits. He drew patterns across maps and calendars, red ink circling moments when Stanton was most vulnerable, alone, distracted. Next was Sergeant Dale Murphy, a harder target. Murphy moved carefully, his steps calculated. He spent evenings at church meetings, weekends at community events, always projecting the image of a righteous man. But Marcus knew masks when he saw them. Behind Murphy's charm was a skeleton of corruption, and Marcus would find the cracks. Finally, Jason Cole, the youngest, sloppier. Marcus caught him stumbling out of a bar one night, drunk and unsteady, his eyes hollow. Cole was haunted. Marcus recognized that look. It was the gaze of a man at war with himself. A crack in the armor, perhaps the only one. Marcus's old skills bled back into him with frightening ease. Surveillance became instinct again. He planted discreet cameras, tapped into unsecured precinct feeds, and tracked their digital footprints. His FBI training hadn't dulled it, had merely been dormant, waiting for this. On his laptop, files began to grow. Photos, recordings, movements. He hacked into their patrol schedules, noting when they rode together, when they separated. He uncovered reports they'd doctored, witnesses they'd intimidated, lies stacked upon lies. Each revelation fueled his rage, and yet, beneath that rage, guilt gnawed. At night, he sat alone with Alicia's photo, whispering into the silence, "This isn't who I am. This isn't who you wanted me to be." But the silence answered back, "They took me. What will you do?" The plan took shape like a puzzle snapping into place. Marcus didn't rush. Revenge wasn't about rage, it was about precision. One wrong step and the system would bury him before he buried them. He set traps in stages, testing their reactions. An anonymous note slipped under Stanton's windshield. "I know what you did." He watched from a distance as Stanton laughed, crumpling the paper, tossing it aside, arrogant, untouchable, exactly as Marcus expected. A week later, Murphy received a call from a blocked number. Marcus said nothing, only played a recording of Alicia's muffled screams. The silence on the other end lasted a heartbeat too long before Murphy hissed, "Who the hell is this?" and hung up. His mask cracked for just a moment. Marcus wrote it down. Fear works. Cole was different. When Marcus sent him an email from a burner account to words, "You remember," the young cop froze. He stared at his screen for minutes, hands shaking. Marcus watched through a camera planted near Cole's desk. This one, Marcus thought, might break. But as the plan sharpened, Marcus's inner war worsened. At dawn, he stood before his bathroom mirror, razor in hand. His reflection was hollow-eyed, gaunt, aged years and weeks. He barely recognized himself. Was he still Marcus Hayes, the man who taught his daughter to be kind, who cooked her breakfast with clumsy hands? Or was he something else, now a predator stalking predators? The gun weighed heavier each night. He'd clean it meticulously, the motions calming yet terrifying. Each click of the chamber was a reminder of the line he was crossing. Once the first bullet left the barrel, there would be no return. Some nights doubt clawed at him. What if Alicia wouldn't want this? What if she'd want him to heal, to forgive? But then he remembered the bruises, the lifeless coldness of her body, the laughter of men who mocked her pain, and his doubts burned to ash. The breaking point came 3 weeks after her death. Marcus sat in his car outside Stanton's house, watching the officer through binoculars. Stanton was in his yard, tossing a ball with his daughter, laughter echoing through the cul-de-sac. For a moment, Marcus faltered. That was a child. Innocent. She didn't deserve to lose her father. But then, like a knife, memory cut him. Don't kill her yet. Make her remember who owns this town. Stanton's voice. Stanton's cruelty. Marcus gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. You played catch with your daughter after taking mine. His chest heaved. No, you don't get to live both lives. The decision crystallized. No more hesitation. No more appeals to a broken system. The law was dead. From that night forward, Marcus Hayes was a hunter. He spent hours refining traps, rehearsing moves. He scouted isolated places where no witnesses would interfere. He built disguises, shifted his routines, prepared alibis. Years of training sharpened into one deadly purpose. His journal filled with names, dates, and chilling notes. Beside Stanton's name, take him first. The arrogant one never sees it coming. Beside Murphy's, he's careful. Break the mask before the body. Beside Cole's, the weak link. He'll crack, maybe use him. Every plan carried the weight of finality. And every time he closed the journal, he stared at Elisa's photo, whispering for you. Yet beneath the planning, his heart remained torn. He would wake at night drenched in sweat, his wife's old voice echoing in his head. Don't let anger consume you, Marcus. But anger was all he had left. The next morning, he looked at himself in the mirror again. But this time, he didn't see a broken father. He saw a man ready to kill. And for the first time, that terrified him less than the thought of doing nothing. And for the first time, that terrified him less than the thought of doing nothing. Marcus Hayes crossed the threshold from mourning father to hunter. Once the decision was made, it clung to him like a second skin. Every day, every night, his mind ran with calculations, movements, vulnerabilities. He became two men at once, the grieving parent the world saw, and the predator moving in shadows. But the world noticed sooner than he expected. The first incident was Stanton. Marcus had followed him for weeks, memorized his habits. One rainy night he intercepted him in an alley on his way back from a bar. The attack was quick, surgical. Marcus struck with precision. No cameras, no witnesses, no hesitation. Stanton disappeared, his absence chalked up to a drunken brawl gone wrong. But the precinct felt the tremor, one of their own missing, and whispers began to spread. Detective Sarah Lindholm was the first to connect dots. A sharp investigator with little patience for corruption, she had noticed inconsistencies in Stanton's record long before. Now, with his sudden disappearance, her suspicions bloomed. This isn't random, she muttered to her partner as they stood outside Stanton's empty house. Somebody's making a point. Her partner shrugged. Or maybe he crossed the wrong guy at the bar. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Or maybe someone's cleaning house. She didn't say Marcus's name aloud. Not yet. But when she pulled old files and saw the unanswered complaints, the grieving father who had stormed precinct halls, something stirred in her gut. Word reached Marcus. A neighbor, a retired friend from his FBI days, knocked on his door one evening. You need to stop, the man whispered urgently. People are talking. They think something's going on. Sarah Lindholm, she's good. She'll find you if you keep this up. Marcus stared at him, silent. You're burning your life down, Marcus. Alicia wouldn't want this. Her name cut through him like glass. He clenched his fists, swallowing back the storm inside. She wanted to live, he said finally, voice low. And they took that from her. His friend's eyes softened, but fear lingered. You're not thinking straight. I'm begging you, walk away before it's too late. Marcus closed the door without answering. Murphy was next. The careful one, the orchestrator. Marcus stalked him through church meetings and community dinners, studying his every move. The man carried his righteousness like armor, but Marcus saw through it. One night Marcus left another note on Murphy's car, just for words. She begged for mercy. Murphy froze when he read it, sweat beading his temple. He scanned the parking lot, but Marcus had already vanished into the shadows. The pressure built. Murphy grew paranoid, snapping at colleagues, drinking heavier than before. Marcus watched it unravel, each crack another step closer. But the system noticed too. Internal whispers turned to quiet investigations. Detectives dug into unusual patterns, asking questions. Lindholm grew louder in her suspicions. "There's a vigilante out there," she told her captain. "Somebody targeting our own. Somebody smart. This isn't coincidence." The captain dismissed her, more worried about public image than truth. "Drop it, Sarah. We've got enough heat already." But Sarah didn't drop it. She kept digging. Meanwhile, Marcus's world shrank. Friends distanced themselves, some out of fear, others out of disappointment. He had been a pillar once, a man respected. Now whispers followed him. He's losing it. He's obsessed. He's dangerous. Even his late wife's sister, who had been his only remaining family tie, confronted him. "Marcus, I know you're hurting. We all are, but this isn't the answer. You're drowning in hate. Alicia wouldn't want. Don't you dare tell me what Alicia would want," he roared, his voice cracking with grief and rage. Tears burned his eyes as he stepped back, chest heaving. "You didn't see her body. You didn't hear the lies they told." She flinched, trembling. "You're not the man you used to be." "No," he whispered, "I'm not." That night she stopped answering his calls. Another bridge burned. Cole, the youngest, felt the pressure most. Marcus had begun leaving breadcrumbs, reminders of that night, fragments of her voice recorded and spliced into anonymous calls. Cole's paranoia grew unbearable. He confided once to Murphy, his voice shaking. "What if someone knows? What if they come for us?" Murphy's hand clamped on his shoulder. "Shut your mouth. You say nothing. You hear me? Nothing." But Jason couldn't silence the ghost in his head. Alicia's eyes, her last breath, it hollowed him out until guilt became his shadow. And Marcus saw it. He recognized the weakness. But every move Marcus made drew heat. Detectives tightened their grip. Patrols increased. Murmurs of rogue activity spread. Some said it was a gang. Others whispered it was a grieving father with nothing left to lose. Sarah Lindholm finally put words to her theory. "It's Hayes. Marcus Hayes. He's trained, disciplined, and he has motive. He's grieving, but he's also dangerous." Her superior scoffed. "You think a retired FBI agent is out there killing cops? That's suicide." But Sarah's instincts screamed truth, and she wasn't about to let it go. Marcus, meanwhile, spiraled deeper. His journal filled with darker notes. His traps became more elaborate, his surveillance more obsessive. He ate less, slept less, his body running on adrenaline and grief. At times, he looked at himself in the mirror and didn't see Marcus Hayes anymore. He saw a hollow-eyed predator, sharpened by rage, and part of him recoiled. What had he become? But then Alicia's smile flashed in his mind, and the recoil vanished. "This is for you," he whispered every night. "I won't stop, not until they're gone." One night, an old colleague, Special Agent Turner, arrived unannounced. "Marcus," he said firmly, sitting across from him, "I don't know what you're doing, but I know where it leads. I've seen it before. You'll destroy yourself. You'll destroy her memory." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Her memory is all I have left, and I'll honor it by making them pay." Turner's eyes were heavy with pity. "If you keep going, there's no coming back. You'll lose everything." "I already lost everything." The silence that followed was final. Turner left, shaking his head. Another ally gone. The walls closed in. The system wasn't blind anymore, it was hunting. Lindholm tracked his movements, piecing together patterns. His name circled tighter around her files. The net was drawing close, but Marcus didn't care. The deeper the system resisted, the harder he pushed. He changed cars, burned phones, cut ties. Every bridge severed made him lighter, freer. Nothing tethered him now, not family, not friends, not law, only vengeance. And vengeance was a fire consuming him whole. By the time Murphy vanished, dragged into the dark by Marcus's hands, his body left as a message, the entire precinct erupted. "This is war," Lindholm said, slamming her fist on the desk. "He's not stopping. He won't stop until they're all gone." She was right. Marcus Hayes was no longer just grieving. He was a storm, a force, and no one, not the system, not the pleas of loved ones, not the warnings of a Liskard, stop him now. And no one, not the system, not the pleas of loved ones, not the warnings of a Liskard, stop him now. Marcus Hayes had crossed the point of no return. The law was gone, bridges burned, morality blurred. All that remained was a father with nothing left but vengeance. Rick Stanton's arrogance had always been his blind spot. He still laughed at the precinct, joked with colleagues, acted untouchable. but Marcus had studied predators long enough to know when they were vulnerable. It was late evening when Marcus struck. Stanton left the gym alone, duffel bag slung across his shoulder, earbuds drowning him in music. He never saw Marcus step from the shadows. The attack was swift. A blow to the back of the head dropped Stanton to his knees. By the time he spun around, dazed, Marcus's gun was pressed to his temple. Marcus silenced him with a punch, dragging him into a deserted lot. The struggle was brutal. Primal two men locked in violence. Stanton fought back, muscles bulging, rage spilling. But Marcus wasn't just fighting, he was hunting. I begged you to protect her, Marcus snarled, slamming him against the hood of a car. She begged for her life, and you laughed. Stanton spat blood, grinning through the pain. She was nothing, just another. The gunshot split the night. Stanton collapsed, eyes wide, blood pooling beneath him. Marcus stood over him, chest heaving, sweat dripping. For the first time, revenge tasted real and bitter. Dale Murphy was smarter, cautious, the architect of but even architects grow careless. Marcus stalked him through weeks of paranoia, watching him drink more, snap at colleagues, double-check locks at night. Fear had crept under Murphy's skin, and Marcus fanned it with anonymous notes, calls, shadows. The kill came in Murphy's garage. Marcus waited in silence until the man stumbled in, keys jangling, muttering under his breath. The door slammed shut, and Marcus stepped out. Murphy froze, his face drained of color. You, he whispered. Me, Marcus said flatly. Murphy tried reasoning. You think this will bring her back? You'll end up just like us. Marcus's hands trembled, rage and grief colliding. Maybe I already am. The struggle was fierce, Murphy fighting with surprising strength, but Marcus's training gave him the edge. He pinned Murphy, forcing his own baton against his throat, pressing until the man's kicks grew weaker, until silence filled the room. Marcus staggered back, trembling. His chest heaved as he looked at Murphy's lifeless body. He should have felt triumph. Instead, he felt emptiness. Jason Cole was the youngest, the weakest, and the most haunted. Unlike the others, Marcus saw something different in his eyes. Guilt, regret, maybe even shame. When Marcus confronted him, Cole didn't fight. It was in a rundown motel room where Cole had been hiding, drowning himself in alcohol. Marcus stepped in silently, gun drawn, eyes cold. Cole looked up, startled, but then he simply slumped back in the chair. I knew you'd come, he said, voice hoarse. Marcus's jaw tightened. Then why didn't you run? Cole let out a bitter laugh. Run from what? From her face, from her screams. I hear them every night. He buried his face in his hands. I didn't stop them. I could have. God help me. I could have. Marcus's grip faltered. This wasn't arrogance. This wasn't defiance. This was a man drowning in guilt. Do it, Cole whispered. Pull the trigger. I deserve it. Marcus's finger hovered on the trigger. Rage screamed at him to end it. But another voice, quieter, broken, whispered, if you kill him, you become them. For the first time, Marcus hesitated. Why didn't you stop them? He asked, voice trembling. Tears slid down Cole's face. Because I was afraid. Because I was weak. And now I can't live with it. The room was silent but for Cole's sobs. Marcus's hands shook. Killing Stanton had given him rage. Killing Murphy had given him emptiness. What would killing Cole give him? Nothing. As Marcus stood there, gun aimed at Cole's head, flashes of memory assaulted him. Alicia's laughter at the dinner table, her tired but determined smile over textbooks, her whispered words, you've given me everything, Dad, and then her final cries. Her broken body. Marcus's vision blurred. He saw himself reflected in the gun's barrel, wild-eyed, hollow, consumed. He looked like them. What have I become? He staggered back, lowering the weapon. His chest heaved, his heart pounding in his ears. Cole looked up, shocked. You're not going to kill me. Marcus's voice cracked. I already did. I killed the man I was. I killed the father she loved. All that's left is this. He dropped the gun onto the floor, the sound echoing like a verdict. But fate had its own design. The door burst open. Detective Sarah Lindholm, weapon drawn, officers behind her. Freeze, drop it. Marcus didn't move. His gun already lay on the floor, but his hands trembled, blood from Murphy still on them. He looked at Sarah, her eyes sharp, unyielding. Marcus Hayes, she barked. You're under arrest. The room was chaos, cops shouting, Cole sobbing, Marcus standing in the center like a broken monument. Slowly, Marcus raised his hands. His voice trembled raw with exhaustion. Do you know what they did to her? Do you know what they took? Sarah's eyes softened just for a moment. I know, but this isn't justice. Marcus let out a bitter laugh, tears streaming down his face. Then what is? No one answered. Time slowed. Marcus's eyes darted to the gun at his feet. His mind raced. One choice, 1 second, would decide everything. Pick it up and finish the cycle. Go out in a blaze, blood for blood, no turning back. Leave it and face the system. Face the cage. Face a world where Alicia was gone, and nothing could ever fix that. His heart thundered, torn between vengeance and surrender. Finally, with a broken sob, Marcus stepped back. His voice was barely a whisper. For you, Alicia, I stop. Sarah moved in cautiously, cuffs clicking around his wrists. The weight was crushing. Final. As they led him out, Cole collapsed against the wall, still sobbing. Marcus didn't look back. He couldn't. Marcus didn't look back. He couldn't. The flashing red and blue lights painted his face as he was led out of the motel. Shackles weighed on his wrists, but the heavier chains were inside him grief, guilt, rage that had burned so hot it left him hollow. Neighbors peeked from windows. Officers whispered among themselves. To them, he wasn't Marcus Hayes, retired FBI agent, loving father. He was a murderer now, a vigilante, a fallen man, but deep inside, Marcus knew he was just a father who had loved too much, lost too much, and given everything away for vengeance. The trial became a spectacle. Headlines blared, ex-FBI agent accused of cop killings. News anchors dissected every detail, debating whether he was a grieving parent, pushed too far, or a criminal no different from the men he hunted. In court, the system finally acknowledged what it had buried. Evidence emerged of Stanton, Murphy, and Cole's crimes witnesses intimidated, files erased, lives destroyed. Marcus's rampage had dragged their sins into the light, but justice was poisoned. It wasn't truth that condemned them, it was Marcus's vengeance. By killing them, he had tainted the very proof he sought to reveal. The judge's words fell like iron. You acted outside the law. Whatever your pain, it does not excuse these crimes. Marcus listened without emotion. What could the law take from him now? His freedom, his life. They had already taken his soul. Prison became his tomb. Days blurred into nights, walls pressing closer, silence heavier than any sentence. Other inmates whispered his name, half in fear, half in respect. Some saw him as a legend, a father who struck back. Others saw only a broken old man pacing in circles, eyes haunted. At night, Marcus dreamed of Alicia, not her broken body, not her final cries, but the simple things. Her laughter over burnt eggs, the way she rolled her eyes at his clumsy jokes, the warmth of her hand when she said, "You've given me everything, Dad." Those dreams were both comfort and torture. He woke with tears, reaching into the dark for someone who would never be there. Sometimes, he asked himself if it had been worth it. He had wanted justice, but what had he found? Blood on his hands. A mirror that showed a man no different from those he killed. He had crossed every line, abandoned every principle, and in the end, the only thing left was silence. Did vengeance give him peace? No, it gave him emptiness. Detective Sarah Lindholm visited once. She sat across the table, her gaze steady. "You dragged the truth out," she said softly. "People finally see what those men did. The department can't bury it anymore. Their families, they'll never see them as heroes again." Marcus studied her, eyes hollow. "And my daughter, will they see her as a victim, or just a footnote in my crimes?" Sarah swallowed, unable to answer. She slid a file toward him. Inside were photos of vigils, students lighting candles outside the hospital where Alicia once studied. Signs read, "Justice for Alicia, say her name." Marcus's fingers trembled as he touched the photos. For a moment, he almost smiled, but it faded quickly. "Justice," he whispered bitterly. "Too late, always too damn late." Sarah left without a word. Years passed. Marcus grew older, weaker, his hair grayer, his body Prison consumed him, but grief consumed more. He rarely spoke. Inmates avoided him, sensing the weight of sorrow pressing from his silence. He became a ghost long before death came for him. One night, he sat by the barred window, moonlight spilling onto the concrete floor. He clutched Alicia's photo, creased, worn, edges frayed from years of holding. He stared at her smile until his vision blurred. "I tried," he whispered. "God forgive me, I tried." Tears slid down his face. His chest ached. His breaths grew shallow. And there, in the quiet, Marcus Hayes died not with violence, not with rage, but with the soft whimper of a man who had nothing left. The world moved on. The headlines faded. The case became another story filed in archives, debated in law classes, whispered in precinct halls. Some called him a monster, others a martyr, but most forgot, except for the candles. Every year, students gathered outside the hospital where Alicia once studied. They lit flames, whispered her name, remembered her light. Her dream of healing lived on in them, even if her life had been stolen. And somewhere in that flickering glow, the hollow man who had once been her father, lingered a cautionary tale of love, vengeance, and loss. The story ended not with victory, but with a question. What does justice mean when the law is broken? What does vengeance mean when it destroys the one who seeks it? And what remains of a man who gave everything for his daughter, only to lose himself along the way? The answer lay in silence, in sorrow, in the image of Marcus Hayes, once an agent of law, now just a ghost in memory. And in the end, all that remained was unease, because maybe vengeance is never about justice. Maybe it is only about destruction of the guilty, of the innocent, and of the avenger himself.